At this point a year ago, you began practice with two guys who were unable to play. What is your what is the physical condition of the team right now?
Well, I think we are a physical team. I know that wasn't the question, but we actually had a scare a few days ago with London. There was a collision, and we were worried about his shoulder. And he has not practiced for a few days, but all the tests indicate that he's going to be okay. It's just a matter of healing up. So that was a concern. But right now there is more depth than at this point last year. From the point guard standpoint, with last year we didn't have John Taylor. Tevin wasn't available at that time, and we were using different guys that it wasn't their natural position. So this year there's some more guys who can handle the ball, and it makes it a little easier, though the last couple of days we've been a little crude, and I think a lot of coaches at this stage are dealing with some of those things, but there are more options at that spot for ball handlers. Yeah, everybody, as far as Malcolm, Darion, Akil, Joe missed some this summer. Everybody is practicing. The only guy who's not is London. I think that's right. I'm just going through the list. Everybody else is practicing. Tip it down.
Tony, what will we see from Anthony? What will Anthony bring to you guys?
He's, he played with Coach McKay for the Athletes in Action Tour, and those are a little different in the summer, but and Richie and I have talked a lot about him. There's a little rust, certainly, but he's one of the more aggressive or physical forwards we have in terms of drawing fouls. Even in practice, there's not a lot of fouls called at this stage. We do have some officials coming in a few days, so it'll be interesting, but he has an ability to draw contact, to pick up fouls, and I think he'll get to the free throw line, and he's a very good offensive rebounder, good moves. So he brings that ruggedness that is a threat when he has the ball, whether he's facing or even back to the basket. He's got a little catching up to do. Everybody does, but the newer guys from just how to be continuous, offensively and defensively. There's just repetitions that those guys don't have and that the first years don't have, that you can see the other guys are more adjusted to what we're trying to do, especially at this stage. And fatigue sets in because we practice hard, it's physical, and then when guys start getting tired, you see some of the things break down. So I think with Anthony, as he learns to be continuous, continues to get used to our system, I think he'll be a real threat for us. Is something going to drop on my head? Or it's up there. Oh, he's up there. Get my bald spot up here. So.
Tony, right here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. A lot of people think you have one of the deepest benches in the country, and sort of a two-part thing. As a coach, how does that challenge you to keep everybody happy and that sort of thing? And what will that kind of depth allow you to do, not only defensively but offensively this year?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen how deep we are. I do, if we're healthy, and I pray for our health all the time because I know how important that is, but there is more than we've had at this stage, and a key always comes in. I think guys can then play harder in shorter stints. Hopefully we don't have to wear guys down, but as the season progresses, you're playing the guys that you feel most comfortable with, and if that's 10, great. If it's 11, if it's 8, 9, that is to be determined. That chemistry piece, though, we got competitive guys, we've got talented players. There's going to be a war for playing time, but will they put them, the team above themselves? The old cliche, they have to, and I think you always have to be ready because of the way the game is, foul trouble, injuries, all those things. So if they're willing to be patient, if they're truly willing to embrace trying to do something as a group, that'll be the key. Will there be frustrations, and guys used to playing a lot? Of course, but I think we got a group that wants to be good collectively, and that's still how we have to do it. We don't have enough individual talents just to line them up and say, hey, we're going to dominate people. We have to do it collectively, and different guys at different times. Sometimes you'll play teams that'll have 4 guards on the floor. You have to match up and figure it out. So we talk about that a lot. It's why we try as hard as we can to recruit character and guys that are genuinely excited about trying to make this program better and better. And if they are and there's character, they'll embrace the team and fight for individual goals, but not above being successful collectively.
Tony, you got a lot of bodies and a lot of options in the front court. Where does Evan Nolte fit in?
Yeah, Evan is, there's probably, 5 legitimate front court players if you call Evan. Evan is that guy that's kind of we've been playing him some on the wing. He's a 4-3, checking him out in that spot. He's a threat certainly from outside, which is important for us. And as he's gotten stronger, he looks better. He's improved. I think he gives us some flexibility. And I told him when we talked, I look at you as a versatile, wing forwards. Maybe the 3 sometimes, possibly the 4. And I can't say you're going to just do this. Last year he was mostly what we would call probably a facing 4. But as he's improved, hopefully defensively he can handle it, and his ball handling I think he'll get some looks on the perimeter. But again, we're still a ways out to seeing how guys do, and the scrimmages will help us in that when we play some of the opponents to get a feel for who can handle what situations.
Tony, Justin really surged at the end of last season, and even throughout the season seemed to pick up your defensive concepts pretty well. What is the next step for him, particularly on the offensive end? Yeah,
he's worked hard. All of them have worked hard in the offseason. He looks like I told him, a little more efficient this year, and that's something that I've said that to him from day one. But real good players, their offensive game is efficient, and I think they're continuous, and that's for him. It's both ends. I always use those words a lot with him, and I think he's gotten better in those areas where he doesn't make one effort and then stop. Whether it's a big offensive play and then stand, he's learning to be continuous, move without the ball more and not stand. He's worked hard on his outside shot, his ball handling, some of those things. Now it's obviously efficient. You don't have to be a volume shooter, impact the game with your ability to shoot pull-ups, to get to the offensive glass, to slash, to different areas. I think he's complete that way. And at times we played him as a 4 last year. So I guess back to you, we have 6 guys who could be in that spot. But mostly he's been playing on the perimeter, and I think efficiency, that's what I'd say with him, because he showed great signs. And then last year at the end of the year, Mike and him, some of our younger guys stepped up, and that was good to see. And he always brings the energy, there's no question. But I just see a little more maturity in him, and a more skill has developed through the course of the off season. And that's I think I want to see it consistently and efficiently there.
Yeah, so Coach, the preseason hoopla is as intense as it's been in a while for this team. Magazine.
Say that again,
the preseason hoopla, kind of the expectations are as high as they've been in a while. Is that something you guys have met head on and discussed, or are you just trying to block it out at this point?
Yeah, I mean we were fortunate, and you'll probably get the guys referring to it. Coach Carlisle, Rick Carlisle came in, and Terry Holland. It was great. There was a ring ceremony for the 3rd years that Coach Carlisle spoke at. I don't know if Coach Holland spoke at that, but he did? Okay. But they were here, and they spoke to our team before our first official practice, which I don't know what date. They keep changing the date. But it was really helpful because they both addressed that. Say, you're a little older. Sounds like you got a deep team. Expectations, what do you think? And they just said, managing expectations, Carlisle said, it's about the process. And, we talk a lot about that. He said, don't get caught up in what they say, especially now. It's about getting better each day. He even used the analogy, I liked it. He said, all right, if we're running a play for, we got to win the game, so last second shot, and we're running a play for you. I think he used Justin as the example. What are you thinking about? That's what he asked Justin. And, and in my mind, I'm thinking, make the shot. That's what I'm thinking as a player. And he said, no, you're thinking about using the screen the right way, coming off, right, left, square up, balance, hold my follow through. That's what good players do. That's the way the thought process goes. He said it's the same thing for your practices, getting better each day, competing with each other. And that end result, that's all a byproduct. So I thought it was a great message to our team, and certainly something I think most coaches talk about. But that's, I think, where we're at. And, we've had some practices to remind us that we do have a ways to go, but there's certain excitement. I mean, to have, more depth and more experience, looking forward to the challenges in front of us.
Tony, you've obviously got some depth and some versatility. Can you talk about your process of finding a rotation? Does it start now, or do you have to have games under your belt?
Right now, to me, it's more like boot camp. I mean, I think we've had, is it 8 practices? Because you get 30 and 42 days. So I think we were 8 practices in, and then we have our fall break. So it's kind of interesting that we won't be practicing during that. So we haven't thought about that. I think that will be, as we get closer to some of the scrimmages and in the scrimmages, that it will reveal itself. But I think it's going to be pretty flexible even as the season progresses. I really do. And it'll be different lineups. That's a good thing, but it's challenging. Certainly, guys, in practice, we make it. We're able to kind of say, all right, we're splitting teams, white versus the blue, and compete. And it's not one team dominating the other, and that's what I like, because that makes each other better. So, but as far as rotation, that'll be, I think, fluid.
Tony, how much did Mike benefit from that summer World Under-19 thing?
Yeah.
I know he didn't play a lot, but how much
Right.
did he benefit?
Yeah, well, he practiced a lot, and that was good because he was going against really good players. I think it helped him from a confidence standpoint. I think we talked about it when we did a press conference. He's been a little more vocal. I think I reminded him in practice one time. I told him, take off your gold medal. You can't play with that on. I thought he wasn't giving the effort he needed to, so I kind of used that. Since I was with him, I figured he's free game. I got to see it all and enjoy it. But he saw a side of talent and competition in daily doses that you just don't usually have the opportunity unless you're playing probably at the NBA level with some of the guys he went against. And that realization of how hard and how competitive it is, I think, was positive. You always know that. You always have to play hard. It's an adjustment. But then when you get in that setting against those guys and you've got every GM watching your games or scouts or all, you just see a level of competition that I think is one of the best things for him, because he has the skill set. He also saw the physicality that he needed, and I think when you see him, he's put on some weight. He's almost, I think he's 250 now, so, and all that stuff's important, but I think he gained confidence that way and also learned a lot about himself. And I've probably 3 times after a practice or sit down and say, all right, remind me again, Mike, tell me what it is you learned this summer. Like if I think maybe he didn't show it out there in practice, or I said, keep reminding me so you remind yourself, because that's invaluable, the experience that he had.
When he played before, Malcolm seemed wise and mature beyond his years. With all the youth at point guard, how is he 100% and probably chomping at the bit to get playing?
Yeah.
And what a benefit is it to have a kind of a savvy young guy?
Right. He's he's a third year. Well, he's a second year, obviously, playing wise, but he has 3 years. You see rust at times, and you can't help that, but also you see some good things. I forgot how strong. He's powerful, and he's when London's been out, he's a guy, call him a power point guard, whatever, he can play, and I think he just has to kind of get a feel for the timing and learn when to be aggressive, when to let it come. I mean, that's something I think all our guys, they're so anxious to play hard, show that they can score, they can do that. They're going against each other that once they get a feel, I think they'll be better. But I'm so happy to see him out there because I know how hard he worked with his rehab and pretty significant injury. To see him holding up and playing very hard has been encouraging.
You mentioned, I was going to ask you about Malcolm as well. You mentioned that he was playing point guard when London got hurt. Is he an option as your starting point guard, or?
Yeah, I think you could
Malcolm?
definitely. I mean, I think you could. He's shown me. I mean, again, we'll find out in the scrimmages, and I keep saying, and I really, even when in recruiting, it's more of a defensive question. Offensively, it's so interchangeable in our system because you have to be able to move without the ball. I say you got to be Ray Allen and you got to be Chris Paul. I'd like them both. That'd be good. But meaning sometimes you got to fly off screens. You got to really move hard. But a lot of times you're handling the ball and you're using ball screens, or you're trying to get in the lane and make plays. So completeness offensively is significant. It really shifts to, can you guard those point guards? And that's something we're going to really have to replace this season without John Tell. He was a bulldog in that regard. So it really shifts to that. But offensively, Yeah, no, Malcolm can do it, and everybody's a little different, the way they play that position, but I think there's room for that.
Tony, one of the point guards, Devin Hall, is he truly in the mix right now for playing time? Are you looking to maybe redshirt? Because I know he's young.
Yeah, he is young. It's too early to say where any of the guys are at. He showed he can pass. Again, he's just a complete guard. A couple of our young guys have had some rough practices when it's gone, and that's been good. I always like to see if they've struggled a little bit, how they'll bounce back. That, to me, will tell me a lot. But Devin knows how to play the game, is gifted as a passer. He's just got like Anthony, who is new to the system, London, and Devin. Those are the three. Malcolm has a year, though he didn't do a lot. Those guys are a little behind with, just from a system standpoint. You can see it's new to them, and I think they're thinking real fast. And when that slows down, I think we'll get a better feel of that. But I think he has a chance, certainly, to carve out some playing time. But that's to say for sure is way too premature for him. Or it really, obviously there's going to be guys that are going to play. I just have to determine how many on the perimeter. If we play Nolte, some in the three, how many guys are we comfortable going with? So time will tell. No, we haven't even talked about that, and I haven't even really thought about that. I'll be honest. I haven't thought about. I don't know. That's always the player's decision. I always tell, this is how I do redshirting. If it isn't, this isn't about Devin, but in recruiting, this comes up. I say, this is what I think for your long term. To me, when I look at players, their first year, it's kind of important, it's about what they're going to be 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. And, if they can get to be upperclassmen and stick around and all that, that's what I look at. So I suggest, hey, here's the way I see it, here's what I think. But I always give the final word to the player and the family, because that's a big decision. And I don't know this year if there's, unless there's an injury, if there's really any possibilities. I won't make that decision or even think about that. Start to think about who would be considered until after our 2 scrimmages, maybe a few days before our first game, because then obviously you have to make that decision. But to do it now, to me, is there's a lot of time to make that.
Who are you guys scrimmaging with?
We're scrimmaging. Am I allowed to say this? I am. I think so. All right, but I think so. No, we're scrimmaging. If I get in trouble, I think it's Georgetown. We are scrimmaging. I don't think I'm at Georgetown and Marquette are our 2 scrimmages. They're closed door, and obviously those are the rules. It's not an exhibition. So obviously quality teams, and we've done this the last couple of years. I think it's just like when you can comment on a recruit, but you can't go into detail about it, and I can't give you anything. But that'll be terrific for us, and different styles, and we've done that with Marquette in the past. This will be the first time with Georgetown.
To imagine that we've been sitting here all this time and nobody's mentioned Joe Harris.
Who?
How much did he obviously wore down at the end of last
Yeah.
year, was carrying a lot of pressure on him and all that stuff. How much did he learn from that, and how much different do you expect that he'll be this year with a full complement of teammates?
Yeah, we're probably, if again staying healthy, we have a few more weapons, so can't be quite as much a focal point, though he will. Because he didn't get to play and go to the USA trials, he had the issue with his foot, so he didn't get a lot of basketball this summer. He did in the spring, he did early, and then we had to shut him down to rest him, which I think will prove beneficial as the season goes on and even at the end of the year. So he's working out some kinks, getting his timing, but I think there's so much. It's the best time to learn is when you've struggled or you've gone through something. And now him being in his last year, he wants it to go so well. He's such a wonderful young man. But we talk a lot about that. Just like I say to Mike, what'd you learn from the summer? All right, let's talk about it. We always go through that because you can't just forget about stuff. Because he was significant in getting us there. And then we struggled, and he was, whether it was fatigue, whether he was double-teamed or other issues, I think he certainly has grown from that, and he looks good. Again, he's gotten stronger, too, every year. Coach Curtis does such a terrific job. Our guys look more like, men, which is what you need to be a, I tell them you got to be a blue-collar team. That's the way this team's going to be. It might not be the prettiest team, but they're going to have to be physical and rugged. It's not a fringe team. We don't have that luxury. We're not going to be anything but, physical on the glass, hopefully getting to the line more. Those are two areas where we struggled last year, weren't great statistically, and I think the strength factor and different options can hopefully help in those two areas that are important.
Comrade White wrote this morning that perhaps you have been a little more demanding in practice given the team's experience and depth. Fair assessment?
Yeah, probably, and it's early, and I think you have to set the tone, and I demand, you always, it depends which day you catch me on. He's only been to one practice, so I don't know how you can comment on that. So, but anyways, yeah, he's always out for coffee when we're practicing. I look for him and ask him questions, but no, I think at times if it's guys that I think either have experience or can handle it, I'll push them. And I like to sometimes see how they respond, and sometimes I get angry. It's kind of a both and, but I do want to demand them. You want to make it uncomfortable. You want to stretch them and push them. And because I think this group, they need that. And there's been times I've probably challenged them more, and when either I haven't been pleased or I want to just see how they respond. And there's, as I said, we've had a couple of crude practices. We haven't practiced well a couple of times, but that's all part of it at this stage. And we're trying to generate some leadership, but sometimes when the coach, it's kind of the coach against them, you just like to see how they'll rally together, and how will they stop talking, will they, because they're great young men, but I said when you step between the lines, I want to see something a little different, and I want to see you're mature now. You don't have to worry about speaking out of turn or talking, and sometimes when you push on them, a couple times they got real quiet, and that's when I barked at them more. Or if there's non-negotiables, you heard me use that term, if we're sloppy with the ball, which we have been lately, if we're just, lose concentration on some key areas, that's where I always tell them I have a right to get after you, and there's been some areas where we've broken down, and you have to make your point early and often, I think, at this stage.
With a team of this depth, walk-ons won't figure much, but Jeff Jones is a legacy here. Just a little bit about him and your decision to bring him on as a walk-on.
We have three guys that were, we're adding, three guys that are in practice. And I don't know how we're going to work it in terms of if there's going to be a rotation for who suits up or who travels. I think you can only have so many, so that'll be in the process. But as you mentioned, Jeff, who obviously his father is great and a heck of a coach. And Malik, who was, sometimes we try to get him in games. We had him on the roster. He was a manager for us, and Malik Frazier is great. And then Rob, whose brother is a pretty good punter last time I checked, and a good field goal kicker. So, but Rob was with us 2 years ago. And so those three are new additions as far as practice goes, and then we'll determine how it'll work. But Jeff's kind of gives us some depth as a forward type, and they're the greatest servants. I mean, they jump in there, they guard, they play defense, they press us, they do whatever you ask. If guys are shooting, and they'll step out of drills so the other guys can get reps. They have an unbelievable attitude, and I love that about them. But they push, and they're very valuable, because sometimes guys need a little break, and they'll jump in there, and who knows? It's if they'll ever see the floor. But I'm happy to have them, and it's not a glamorous position, but it's good, and certainly with Jeff's history, and I think Ethan and Jason smile, Coach Williford, because they probably remember him when he was this big, and now he's with us for this, and it's good to have him.
I don't remember you making any apologies for your schedule last year, although it was kind of used against you.
Yeah.
Maybe in the selection process. Talk about your schedule this year, and are you sure that it will meet the NCAA test?
Yeah, I mean it's we'll have to play. I think it's strong. We're away from home more, and last year's was strong. If we could have been fortunate enough to get to Madison Square Garden, which we've talked about that's been well documented. But I think this year, on paper, you don't know until how good teams are going to be. So it's hard to do it. But we've tried to be purposeful in who we've scheduled, where we play them. challenging ourselves to get ready because the conference itself with the additions makes it another level. And we'll have to play every game, and I think that's it's a little daunting, but I think it's what you need to find out where you're at early, and then to prepare you for the rigors of ACC play, which obviously has stepped up.
Coach, you obviously you lost John Tell as your point guard. You've got obviously you got other options this year, but with the depth that you have, is there a plan on your part to maybe pick up the pace offensively? I mean, that's something I think a lot of people seem to be at least talking about. At least is now you have so many more bodies. Is that something you can actually realistically do?
We'll see. I mean, I just want to play good basketball. I tell them, get good shots, crash the glass, take care of the ball. If we can get good stuff, great. Try to be efficient, just like I want our players to be individually. If we have guys who can make some plays and we have opportunities, absolutely. I think the pace of play, style of play, as we talk about, is dictated so much by our defense. But, I keep hearing this depth, and that remains to be seen. I got to see it. It looks like it on paper, but I want to see it, and hopefully we will. But absolutely, I think the way for us is if it's pace you're talking about, if you ever watched us, we take a shot, we don't wait till the clock's down. It's, can we find ways to get different kinds of points? I think that's important for us, and that maybe will help us score a few more. And that's why I alluded to earlier, if we can be better at offensive rebounding, and I think we have that. And a lot of that has to also do with our transition defense. We talk about that. And if we can get to the line more, those are the two areas that, again, I look at our stats from a national standpoint where we were not strong. Other areas we were pretty good. Even efficiency in some areas we were pretty good. But I think those are those points that if the outside shot's not going down or you're having some issues, that can improve. And, I can't, if we could, we don't have someone as fast as John Tell, so maybe we're going to play slower. So how's that? So.
You touched on Rob and the walk-ons. What's the story of him? How did you get him back? Did you approach him? How did that come about?
For Rob, okay. Glad you pronounced his last name better than I can. So yes, no. Rob, well, he's been great. He's just said, Coach, last year he wanted to be a part of it. We had the numbers in a spot where it wasn't required, but he's been patient. And he said, I'll come to the walk-on tryouts. I'm in better shape. I'll do whatever you want. And he's been persistent, but very respectful about doing anything he can to be part of it, knowing that, if it's practices only, and that's why this year when the opportunity arose, and it's good, and we had some guys get banged up early. It was in the fall, so it was good to have him. He did a good job at the tryouts. We had little mini tryouts, and he did a nice job, so he earned that for sure.
Coach in the back, you've had a number of transfers since you've been here. I guess it kind of happens at every college, but what do you mainly attribute it in general? Why do kids transfer? And does it say something about, kids just say, I'm not going to get playing time, I'm going to leave? And what does it say about college basketball, how nobody's really willing to grit it out and say, hey, let me work up to getting into the rotation? Yeah,
sometimes there's valid reasons why guys leave. Usually it does revolve around playing time. I think that is always a factor. But every time someone transfers, you try to learn from it and make adjustments in your own program. We have lost guys. Every one of them was a solid young man. There wasn't a bad egg in the bunch, you'd say, but they are all solid for different reasons. They left. I wish they could have. I wish you had a crystal ball and you could see, boy, if I just waited, how many opportunities would present themselves if it's about playing time, because they always do. And that's why the depth thing is important, because you don't know when certain things happen. But it's the way it is a trend. It's the way it's going in college basketball. We talk about it at our head coaches meetings, the national convention. It's talked about. And I don't know. I wish I had a better answer to say this won't happen. I wish I could tell you this thing's airtight. We're not going to lose any more guys. I don't think that's the case. So I've said it before. We've got to be proactive. We've got to also plan on perhaps someone's going to leave and have a contingency plan and just really work it that way. But it's It is frustrating because it wasn't as much of a case. I wonder if in other sports it's creeping up like that. I know basketball, it's out of hand. I don't know if in other sports, but it's hopefully you make it the best situation for them, and that's why I think Virginia's so great. I always scratch my head because it's such a well-rounded place for basketball, academics, socially. There's so many opportunities, and you just want guys to see the big picture, and it's our job to keep building relationships with them so that they'll stay. But if not, we have contingency plans, as I said, and that's how it's kind of become.
Tony, one more question. Coach, we're here representing Wahoo Central, and we want to know what your expectations are for the student section this year.
The student section, they've been great since we've been here. It's grown, and I love it. I think I tried one year to come up with a real clever cheer, and I think you tried it like right when they were about ready to shoot a free throw, everybody got dead silent, and then you timed your yell or your scream so it would throw them off. So just keep coming, keep supporting, and let's make it. I mean, like I said, last year, the home winning streak we had, to see, I watch games and I'm amazed the endurance of how they can bounce that long. That always impresses me. So see if we can get a little more air in our vertical. I think if we could add 3 inches of that vertical as we're bouncing, it might be more impressive. But no, the support, and like I said, I always encourage our guys to, I think, don't just to interact with the student body like in the right way. Don't just hang out only with the athletes. Get to know these students. Get to know the people that support you when they come, and I think our players take advantage of that. So appreciate what they've done so far. I think every year it's gotten bigger and better, and hopefully this year we'll put a product on the floor that'll get people jumping and bouncing.